Well, good afternoon. Thank you for coming for today's candidate forum.
Yeah, I hear you.
You can't hear me? Who can't hear me? At all? No? I gotta yell?
Stand in the middle.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna make any difference, but we'll see. Okay, try this. Is that better? A little bit better?
About the same.
About the same. Okay. All right, well, I will try and speak loud. I just didn't want to blow everybody out at the front, who's sitting in the front row.
No.
So I'm Maria Mark. I'm president of Beaches Watch, and we are hosting the Atlantic Beach Candidate Forum. So again, thank you all for coming. It's a beautiful afternoon and nice way just to spend an hour to get to know the candidates, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I will be your host and also the moderator for today's forum. It is being videotaped and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and our website tomorrow, beacheswatch.com. For the first timers here who do not know who Beaches Watch is, we are a nonprofit civic organization whose mission in part is to host programs like this to inform the beaches citizens on important topics that can impact your quality of life. We are a membership organization, and your dues and donations support us to do candidate forums such as this, and it also supports our Flan Sharp Memorial Scholarship for Fletcher High School senior, and the Give Back Award, which we give every December to an organization who really helps enhance the quality of life for our citizens here. Okay, our membership runs $20 for family, $15 for individual, and $5 for students. And we do have some information on the back table. If you have not joined or you'd like to learn more about our organization, please pick up a brochure in the back. And now we will get to the forum. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Since Ellen Glasser has withdrawn her candidacy, we will have host for the seat 3 candidates. We have Mark Gabrinowitz and Thomas Grant. Thank you. So we also sent the candidates written questions, and the candidates who responded, their written answers will be posted to our website tomorrow as well. We will also still publish Mr. Ford's responses if he submitted them to us. Okay. I'm going to have to stand over here, so I will hopefully speak louder.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Speak into it.
Yeah, that
better?
worked a little bit.
Maybe I need to hold it to the side here.
No.
Hold it directly in front of
Hold
your
it
mouth.
right there. Okay.
Directly.
All right. So just some brief rules before we start the forum. Each of the candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to the...
I was
3 minutes to respond to the questions and 3 minutes for closing. Well, because we have only 2 candidates, we give you a little more time. Okay? I'm sure you're not going to use all that time, right? Sandy is our timer. She will show you when you're at your 30 seconds, flash your 30-second paddle, and then time's up. And if you continue far beyond what we think you need to, she will
pull the plug.
That's right. She'll ring
Gong
the bell.
you. I'll gong you.
All candidates will answer the same questions, and they'll be alternating so that not one candidate is always answering first or last. There is no time for rebuttal. However, the candidates are free to use their time to respond in any manner they choose. Gentlemen, if you're not answering your question, we just ask that you refrain from causing or creating any distractions. No funny faces. We also ask that you be respectful of the time allotted to you to ensure the candidates have equal time to respond. And audience, we also ask that you refrain from any unnecessary distractions. Please hold your applause to the end of the forum, and that way we'll ensure an uninterrupted session and we'll hear from all the candidates. Okay? So, all right, we will start alphabetically. We'll start with Mark. So tell us about yourself, why you are running for office, and what differentiates you from your opponent.
Hi. Hi. Thank you. I'm Mark Gabrinowitz. Thank you, Maria. And if you like what you see, you have to thank Sally Clemens, a member of this organization, And if you don't like me, she blame her as well. She's the one that started me on my journey. She said I needed to join the Environmental Stewardship Committee. And I did that about 5 years ago. Served with them for 5 years, and 3 of those was as chairman. So I think that's important point of view, because I know the city, I know how the staff works, I know a lot of things about the city. Know a lot of things too. Tom, I just met Tom for the first time out in the parking lot. We're neighbors. I could have thrown a softball over to his house maybe 15 years ago. I could hit it, but I don't know Tom. And my mom told me when I was young, assume and make no judgments about people who you see. Give them the benefit of the doubt until they prove otherwise. So Tom, I think you're a good guy, a good-looking guy. So good to have you as a neighbor. Now I know where you live. Practice my softballs. But I do want to be serious about who I am. I received my appointment from a guy who was a district guy over here, representative of Florida for 22 terms, Charles Bennett. And he was a unique guy because he represented he was Democrat, but he represented mostly a Republican community. And I think that's telling. And one of the things I don't like about what's going on is divide in our city. You're Democrat, you're Republican. This is a non-partisan election. And as it should be, and when I am commissioner, you may not agree with everything I say, but it's still a non-partisan election. I want to be your candidate from seat 3, but when you vote as a commissioner, you vote for the entire city. So yes, we have specific issues with the tree canopy and flooding in seat 3 area, that district, but you also have problems with marshes, and believe me, I'm well aware of these problems. I've sat through a lot of the commission meetings. I know, not all the answers, but my background as an engineer, my background from the Naval Academy, where the mission was to produce leaders. That's me. I've done that many, many different types of jobs around the world, many different situations. I can solve problems. I know how to solve problems. I don't know a whole lot of things about a whole lot of things, but I know how to get to the end. And it's called planning. Oh, I see a paddle coming up, okay. But it's important to understand when you solve a problem, what the problem is. So, Tom, I said I'd give you the benefit of the doubt, but when you go to the polls, and you're about ready to make a decision, you can't give the benefit of a doubt when you vote. You have to know the candidate.
Thank you. Mr. Grant?
Thank you. Appreciate everyone coming out on a football Saturday afternoon. Those SEC fans, I know that must be tough for you, but thanks again for being here. Again, my name's Thomas Grant. You know, I had not met Mark either, and I had neighbors that know him, and I was like, how do you know Mark? Well, he lives right around the corner from us and you. And then I looked on the map like a week or so ago, and like, there's my house, my backyard neighbor's house, and then his house. That's how close. So we're literally, 600 feet away. So I think we have a lot of similar views in some things. I want to start out by apologizing. When I drove up to the church today, coming down Sherry rather, and then taking a right here, I noticed my signs on ABE grounds and the church grounds, and that's major major faux pas. I don't know who did that. I still don't know who did it, but I'm gonna get to the bottom of it, and I apologize in advance. That's bad form. I talked to Mark about it too. I had no idea. It was not authorized. Most of my people know that you can't do that sort of thing. So apologize in advance. That was just uncalled for. So I was a little sweaty earlier because I went outside and grabbed them all up. And then my son's running, I think, right now to pick up the one at the school. So, but the reason I live, like I said, we both live deep in Selva Marina, 1900 block. I've been here for 27 years. I've lived in other beach communities, even prior to that, so a total of like 32 at the beaches. So I've seen the politics of yesterday and today. I think I got really interested in what things were happening about 5 years ago when I saw some of the effort being made to control the stormwater with regards to lot coverage and permeable surfaces, and we'll get into that later. But I saw I was like, you know, the ordinances passed. I'm like, okay, seems a little bit severe. Let's wait and see. And then not too long after, I see neighbors having to build retention ponds in their front yard. Well, that to me is an unintended consequence of some of these ordinances, right? Is stormwater a problem? Yes. I think there's some other ways to address it, and we'll get into those. But again, you know, I'm more common sense than I am anything else. Common sense over government, common sense over politics. And my 30 years or 28 years at Crowley Maritime, you know, being a logistics solutions expert, kind of prepare me, I think, for what's ahead at the City Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Mr. Grant. Next question. What do you think is the most important issue for Atlantic Beach? If elected, what would you do to address that issue?
Well, that didn't take long. We got right into stormwater. And I do believe that's the most important issue the city faces, without a second thought, right? I've been in the meetings. I've heard, you know, the outcries from, you know, different groups, different pockets of the city that are suffering from drainage, and I think it's absolutely horrible. I've even heard stories about young children that were afraid to go to bed because, you know, when it rains, because they're fearful their home will flood. I mean, that's just heartbreaking. So I think it's a major problem. How do we solve it? Okay, I think that, you know, we need to address the flooding where the flooding occurs. And what I mean by that is addressing the infrastructure in that area, improving the infrastructure to the point that those areas don't flood anymore. So what does that look like? Well, I do believe that, you know, there's some areas that we need permanent pumping in place. And then we need to pump the water to retention areas that can hold the water when we can, or when we're able to move that water to the tributaries, which are Hopkins Creek and Sherman's Creek. Okay, you know, we're close to the water. You know, most communities will have some sort of flooding if you don't you know, build some infrastructure to prepare for it, right? I mean, we talk about lot coverage and we talk about permeable surfaces. Well, if you plan correctly, you can overcome those things. Now, retroactively, it's going to be hard, it's going to be expensive, but there are places to get grants to fix some of these things. I mean, for example, if you look at Atlantic Beach Country Club, the residential community there's some residents here. The lot coverage over there is 65%, and they don't flood an ounce. Why? Because they have 2 large retention ponds on the golf course to collect that water, okay? If I thought in my heart of hearts, I'd look at somebody in the eye that was flooding and said, I'll minimize my lot coverage to 35% for you, and I'll build a retention pond in my yard. I would do that tomorrow if I thought it would fix the flooding, but I'm not sure it helps the people in Marsh Oaks on the marsh or the people on 6th Street. You know, I think those people need help. Aquatic Gardens, most recently, we put in pumping, okay, to ahead of the storms. We pumped out their retention pond, and they didn't have any flooding. So let's put a pump in there full time, permanently, and pump it when we need to. Those are the types of things that need to occur. Permanent solutions for, you know, what I feel is our biggest issue in this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was an engineer, majored in physics and oceanography. That was really good for my training. Used that expertise a lot. And one thing that taught me is to go to the experts, find the scientists, let the scientists do the science. Let the engineers do the engineering. I have an opinion about that, but it might be dated. My books are old. I'm sure progressed beyond my slide rule capabilities, but we can't sit around and talk about the problems without doing the proper studies. What is done in one yard may have a negative adverse impact on somebody else's yard. You have to look at the whole picture. And the whole picture has to involve some incentives as well. If you have a lot that has no problem with retention on your lot, maybe you can take some of your neighbors and maybe incentivize with some reduction maybe in your stormwater fund that you pay every month into for that benefit. But if you do have a lot of stormwater runoff and you don't take any cautionary measures, then maybe you should pay more for your stormwater assessment. That's incentivized financially would make a big difference. And this all has to do with resiliency. I know the ESC talked about resiliency a lot, and the city has gold level LEED certification. And talking about grants don't fall off the tree. The city has to be certified and a lot of responsibilities to properly administer those grants. We are very attractive because of our gold LEED certification. That makes a big difference in how the city can operate. We have a grant writer. Unfortunately, he's also the city engineer. But we also have to do a lot of work finding those grants. And we do have a staff that does find those grants for us. That is key, getting the money to do these things. Resiliency, real fast, it's complicated. Resiliency is everything that we do, whether it be stormwater management or climate control, but there are 3 levels of resiliency. The first one is coping. Yeah, it's raining outside, put on your rain hat. Yeah, it's raining a little bit more, oh, we'll dig a ditch and let the water run off. But the third one, and the most important one, is how do you fix that problem? And that's called transformation. As an engineer, you want to transform the problem. You want to get away from putting the Band-Aids on it and go back to grassroots. So let's do a root cause analysis and figure out what's the best solution. That's what I want to bring to the table. An attitude towards, this is the problem, let's do our preventive maintenance, let's do our corrective maintenance. And prioritize them. Some neighborhoods don't need a lot of water. Oh, my time's up.
Okay. Well, you can finish your statement, even if your time
We
is
have
up.
a lot of water issues.
Thank you. All right, and we will continue with Mr. Gabrenowitz on this. Let's continue the conversation. Let's continue the conversation about it brings in the permeable versus non-permeable calculations for lot coverages. So can you elaborate your position regarding these 2 issues in terms that our audience can really understand? Like, how does it work or not work?
Well, it's a simple thing. My yard, I live high up on the hill in the cul-de-sac, not too far away from where he lives. The water comes from my neighbors into my yard. And people would say that's bad. Well, my yard is more of a natural type yard than a grass with a white picket fence around it. So, and intentionally, I want it to be natural. My yard absorbs all of that water from 4 houses around me. It all comes into my yard. I like the sounds of the frogs. I have that problem in the backyard. It's not a problem. That's nature. I am not going to change nature. So, do I have a problem? Yeah, I have a lot of water in my yard. It's there for 2 or 3 days. It doesn't matter to me. Well, it might matter to somebody else. And so when you put down concrete, which is impervious, that means water can't go through it, it's an issue. If you put impervious pavers down, water does not go through it, that's a problem. And then some salesman will say, okay, here, buy these gutters for your roof, it'll keep the leaves out. Well, if you live under a bunch of trees, it's not going to work. It's the same thing with saying your pervious pavers. Well, pervious pavers will work for a short time, but you have to do maintenance on them. So when you buy those pervious pavers, allowing the water to go through, it'll go okay for maybe a year or 2 years. I don't know the truth of that. But one of the ESC members said she has those pervious pavers, and after 10 years, she bought the house. They do not work. So how will the city enforce a solution that requires you to do maybe annual maintenance on those? Don't know. How do you measure the water in your pool? Is that credit for having your 80-foot 80 square foot pool, it's a small pool. How do you control the level of that water? Well, you pump it out before it rains, and then you fill it up again. Well, we'll pump the water out, it goes down into stormwater, so that you're not saving anything. So all these calculations, and the long short of that is, let's go back to what I said in the first question. Let's have engineers engineer the problem, and then get buy-in from the community, and say this is what we want to do.
Thank you. Mr. Grant?
Yeah, thank you. In my palm card, I have a statement talking essentially about this very topic, about permeable surfaces, and that they need to be decided, and their permeability, their calculated permeability, be decided by professionals, by engineers, and not politicians. And that was one of the things that kind of motivated me to get in this race, because I felt like that it was leaning towards the politicians decide those calculations versus the professionals from the previous commission. And so I think that I just want the professionals to make those comments, right? And comment on what is working. I mean, there are materials being processed and manufactured and tested every day that, I mean, I've seen what looks like an aggregate to go in between pavers where the water goes right through it, okay? The industry is conscious about this issue, and they are making products to help us do that better. He and I got a neighbor, Greg Powell, engineer. He wrote a great paper that's, if you go through the website, is in there talking about how pavers and things should behave. All right, and we also just recently, the mayor and with the help of some contractors, put in a pad. Okay, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to go look at it. It's a pad on the closest to the park, on those parking areas, with what's referred to as tab pavers. So the tab on the paver essentially continues to make sure that paved area with your pavers retains its permeability. Okay, and if you've gone out there during a storm, it's shown to work. Okay, now look, I don't have the engineering qualifications he does. That's true, but I think no commissioner should be deciding who's contracted what. I think we got a sufficient, city manager and staff to help us decide those things. I think we need some impartial folks to come in there. And I didn't mean to imply I was certainly going to decide that in my last comment, but we are going to be performing a study next year, okay, to the tune of a couple $100,000 to help us understand what the problem is, and make sure that we don't, we got one shot at this to do it right the first time. I just don't want to keep going, kicking this can down the road and not fixing it. It needs to be fixed once and for all, and we'll, because nobody should be flooding. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, Thomas. All right, I guess staying on the subject of resiliency and that sort of thing, and Mr. Grant, you'll answer this first. What is your long-term vision to address coastal resiliency in Atlantic Beach relative to future extreme weather events and sea level rise? And if any, what steps do you propose that we can take now, or you would want to take now?
Well, I'm from Louisiana, and we build levees over there. That's how we take care of it. You're not going to build levees in Atlantic Beach, in all seriousness. I think that on the, and I've seen the impact of coastal erosion up close. I don't know if you guys, how close you followed the erosion of the coastline of Louisiana, but if you go back and look at, years past, satellite photos, it's atrocious and heartbreaking to see what's happened. Okay, on the marsh side, you've got, the thing that we have to be worried about there is saltwater intrusion. Okay, how do you manage that? Well, Mother Nature has a lot to say about that, right? But there are some things you can do. You can, you can plant certain things. You can help direct, and this, then these things cost money, right? But you can help direct freshwater flow into those areas to make sure that those marshes stay there and protect the coastline. On the ocean side, we're starting to see it firsthand, right? We're seeing the replenishment of the beach every time we have a storm. You can, and in fact, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but the replenishment was so high, in some areas it covered the access. It covered the access walkway. So now we have new walkways to build, and we need to fund that, and we actually have our representative, John Rutherford, who is looking into that to help us recover those walkways, okay? But I think short of, protecting the marsh and protecting the ocean as best we can, I think those are the two things that I would look into most.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Park, that's fine. There's, when you talk about climate change and saving things for Atlantic Beach, you have to take the global picture, because hurricanes are not going to stop at Mayport Road. Flooding is not going to stop at Atlantic Boulevard. It has to be viewed in a whole system. And I think one of the problems we have is in the state of Florida, we have a government that does not recognize climate change. You don't have to be a scientist to go to the water in October and realize that we have August temperature water right now in October. That creates a significant problem for how the hurricanes are formed. All that energy has to go somewhere. Water vapor in the air, that's why we have all this water. There's a whole lot more water vapor in the air. Where does it come from? Well, hot water. So maybe we need to go to the state level and even the federal level to say, we talk about hurricanes, and it's always related to, it has been related to for a long time, on winds. Wind spill, we're worried about winds. We're worried about water now too. What are you going to do about telling people you're going to have a storm surge? You're going to have 10 inches of rain in 24 hours. That is significant. And oh, by the way, it's too late to find out an hour or a day before you get that. We have to have better systems, and it's not the Atlantic Beach system, it's a national system, at the minimum, a state system. So when you go to the ballot box, you have to go and see who is for fixing these problems. Who was there to do this transformation in our resilience? It can't be us. We're big on, Atlantic Beach is big on trees, but if there's an infestation coming from Neptune Beach, we're not going to stop that affecting our trees. So we have to reach out to our local communities, the beaches, and the city of Jacksonville, which, by the way, has recognized Atlantic Beach for their environmental work and many, many awards that we have received. The beaches always look to us for what we're going to do here in Atlantic Beach regarding the environment. So we have a responsibility, because we are leaders in our communities, but we have to go through the Florida legislature, and the city is very, very engaged in the League of Florida Cities, and making our requirements known. So when the state passes some law that we disagree with, well, we are on the bandwagon. We're going to Tallahassee. We're doing those things. So great job for our administration for doing that. Very active. We need to support that. So we can't solve problems locally. We can't control the ocean. We can't control the weather like somebody says we can control the weather. The government cannot control the weather. We should not be voting for people that say that.
Thank you. All right, one last question about tree canopy. So, as you probably know, the tree canopy, particularly up in the older part of Selva Marina, we're dealing with the majority of those trees are water oaks. And the majority of those trees have reached their lifespan, technically. So when as we have more weather events, the wind and the rain, it's creating a threat to the homes and properties. What do you see, or what kind of solutions are you thinking that you would bring to the commission to try and address that safety issue while still trying to maintain the canopy?
I paid Maria Marks a lot of money throwing me softball questions.
It's not even on my list.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disclose that. The trees are one of the barriers we have against winds. And yes, they're getting old. And as Mayor Ford pointed out in one of our Arbor Day ceremonies, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And so what do you do now? Well, plant a tree today. So yes, we have to take care of the older trees, and I do want to incentivize those people who have trees, these old oak trees, and I have one in my yard. It's a heritage tree designation. I want the city, just like incentivizing the permeability ratios on your yard, I want to have an arborist come out to my tree and say, Mark, that limb is going bad. It's not healthy. We need to take that down. Well, to me, that tree is fine. It's not going to hurt me. I just make sure when I'm walking underneath it, it's not going to fall on me. But it'd be so much better if the city said, we recognize the value of the tree because we designated it as a heritage tree. Why don't we have an arborist come out at city expense to say, this is how you need to protect that tree? I am not a tree expert. I'm the first one to say, I like trees. I like what they do to my yard, except for I can't grow any tomatoes. But it's important for us to maintain the tree canopy. We benefit so much from that canopy. And yes, there are trees falling. With 2 trees on Selva Marine went down, I think it was 2 hurricanes ago. And that happens, that's nature. And palm trees go down in my yard, I leave them there because they're habitats for all kinds of critters. And I love that. That's part of nature. And well, if a tree went down across my driveway, I'd have to do something about that. But it's nature. Let nature rule some of these things. And if you know Amy Frankie and how she promotes her garden, it's all natural. She doesn't use insecticides, pesticides. She doesn't do any of that stuff. She lets nature take care of her whole management of her ecosystem. It's her yard. So I want, to answer your question directly, I want more of us to get engaged in taking care of nature the way maybe the Timucuan Indians did a long time ago. They had it figured out. They didn't have to rely on engineering and stuff. They knew intuitively how the oceans work. They knew how the seas work. They knew the benefits of planting and taking care of their environment. So I'm not saying we have to go back to the way the Indians lived, but we have to be smart about what we do with our yards.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Mark and I think a lot alike on the canopy issue. I love my canopy. The wind effect it has, or the effect it has on the wind is remarkable. During Helene, I think at the height of the winds we were getting, I went outside and it was pretty calm, you know, a couple steps outside my door, but you look up in the canopy and it's just, I mean, it's taken 50 plus easy. You can just tell, right? And I say it all the time, you know, the canopy, you know, does protect those homes back there from high winds. And sometimes, I mean, it's really, you know, the streets that are perpendicular to the ocean, those are the ones that traditionally get, when we've had those storms that have come from the Atlantic side, the wind gets in there and pops those trees, you know, those are the ones that you would typically see just because of the direction of their road, not necessarily the canopy. But I'm all for preserving the canopy, but we also have to be mindful that, you know, our laws and ordinances regarding the canopy can be preempted by the state rules, right? And the state rules say that you can get an arborist to come in and say, you know, your tree is dead, and the homeowner can take that tree down without permit or permission.
Ooh, say that again.
Yes, the homeowner, if they get an arborist to tell you that their tree is dead, the homeowner can take that tree down without permit or permission from the city. Okay, I'm not sure you guys, you know, everyone knows that. I think that's a bit much, right? Because, you know, with no disrespect to arborists, but I'm sure, you know, everybody's got a friend of an arborist, or, you know, someone who knows somebody that would, you know, authorize that removal. I just think that, you know, if someone were to come in and buy a lot, or, you know, level a home and come in behind us, or behind the home that was leveled, and tear down all the trees just to build their home, I think that would be completely unacceptable. And I'm not for that in any shape or form. So I think it's important for us as we, you know, continue to push Tallahassee for home rule, for local rule over state rule, that, you know, those are one of the things that we certainly itemize. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Grant, you'll answer this next question. Okay. So we'll move on to a different subject. Do you favor or oppose re-examination of the interlocal agreement with the City of Jacksonville? If you are in favor, what specific adjustments are you interested in making?
Well, I am absolutely in favor of looking at our interlocal agreement. We are, I think we get about 15 cents on the dollar back from the city of Jacksonville for our tax money that goes to them. I think that's one of the lowest in the states, and I'm sorry, lowest in Duval County. I also think that the median value of the homes in Atlantic Beach is the highest. Therefore, you do the math, we're paying one of the highest per median tax amounts to the city. Okay, so are we getting what we paid for? But we, in looking at it and seeing the different services that they cover, there's a few that just really glaring, right? I'll start with, the lifeguard situation. So they pay for the labor, some of the labor of the lifeguard stations, but the lifeguard labor, I should say, the actual salaries of the lifeguards. But we're in the process of building a new lifeguard station for them. Did they contribute to that? I mean, I look at it as an entire beach experience, right, that we're providing to the public of Duval County. Are they helping us with the accesses? Are they helping us do these types of things and trim the growth on those accesses when need be? I don't think they are. The parks, they're not maintaining the parks, we are. And the last time we addressed it with them, they gave us a $500,000 grant just to make us go away, right, and not address it anymore. Okay, fine, short-term solution, but we need continuous maintenance of these parks, okay? And the most glaring is it's not necessarily part of the current interlocal agreement, but it is an agreement we have. It's a separate agreement with the city to pay for fire protection. We pay, was it $1.2, $1.4 million for fire protection. You know how much Neptune Beach pays? Zero. How is that fair? So I just think that there's a lot to be done with this agreement. And I also like to see us, instead of coming to a crisis with it, everybody's got a job, everybody's reviewed monthly, quarterly in your job. Why aren't we doing that the same with this interlocal agreement? Meeting quarterly with those folks in Jacksonville to say, hey, look, this is going well, this is not. We need to remedy this. That's the way to do things. If you go back to somebody, every so often and try to get repercussion from things that happened years ago, it's hard to millage those things out. So, thank you.
I agree with Tom on the agreement review process. It has to be tied to the census data, and the census is every 9 years, 10 years. Because it's based on population, it's based on the other numbers that Tom was talking about, home values. But with that information, then we can make intelligent decisions. Then if you meet maybe every 3 years, because people change, their situations change, maybe there's different requirements. If you make those changes and you have a scheduled review of it, open to the public, so the public knows what's going on. Some of the numbers, I can't cherry pick numbers, but I think it's 18 cents to the dollar. But it's not right when we don't have view of what those dollars go to, those other $27, whatever it is, goes to the city of Jacksonville. People from Georgia come over and use our parks. We don't charge them to come to use our parks. Citizens of Atlantic Beach go and use Jacksonville facilities. Their roads, what is the cost to them for allowing us to use some of their facilities? I don't know the answer to that, but I'm sure there's some sort of rational explanation of why we seem to be in this imbalance. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's an irrational thing. Maybe it hasn't changed in 30 years. But let's do a cost-benefit analysis. pros and cons, because I've talked to some staff people, and they said, we don't want to open that up because it's beneficial to us the way it is. I don't know. I don't know that answer. But it should be transparent, there should be a thorough review by people that know what they're talking about, and let's make a value judgment so we know where we are. The parks are always an issue, maintenance of the parks. We have passive parks, we have active parks. The active parks are the ones where the kids run around and fall off the swing. Passive parks are just, as it says, you go there and you enjoy what you see. One of the things I wanted to do in the city, as an environmental stewardship committee, was to get a group of volunteers, because the park, Public Works, they got 1,000 things to do every day, and probably the last thing on their list is to go and look at the parks. But we have some people in this neighborhood, our neighbors, go out, and they will go, Gretchen Dieter Meyer, will go out, and she goes out, and she coordinates with a whole bunch of neighbors, and they clean up Powell Park. That costs nothing to the city. I wanted to take her idea and model and go to all our parks and have stewards of the park. And I want to pursue that because those volunteer hours helps the city. But you know what else volunteers do? When you volunteer to do something, you take ownership. That is your park. Gretchen knows that's her park, and her neighbors know it's her park. They don't mess around with her. So that's what we need to have.
Thank you. Art, you'll answer this next question. What policies would you advocate to ensure that future growth is beneficial to the Atlantic Beach community?
That's another easy question. Future growth, we're, as everybody knows, we're mostly built out. So when we change what we do, we take down a building, we modify Mayport Road, and I think that should be a major focus of our changes, is trying to make Mayport Road more friendly to bicycles and pedestrians, more attractive. I'm not saying make it look like Carmel in California, but there's things that we can do, and we are doing. We're trying to change the look of Mayport Road. But one of the things that's not been talked about is where people live. Now, the people that work on the staff, I don't know the answer to this, but I assume that a lot of them do not live in Atlantic Beach. Why? Because it's too expensive. Why can't we have some system where we have people who can live and work in the same location? It may not be the grandest big house on the beach, but at least something affordable. So we need to have mixed development of our residences. And that may be maybe multiple homes in one block. I don't know the answer. I'm not a community planner. But we need to incentivize, again, that word incentivize, people who work in Atlantic Beach, give them a right, give them a place to live and work in the same city. You will find a much more dedicated worker that has their feet in Atlantic Beach. So that's a big issue in development. And of course, development, we have to look ahead, make sure that we're a couple of steps ahead of where the climate is, a couple of steps ahead of where we need to go. Safety, of course, is paramount. We need to make sure our safety and fire departments are fully paid and responding. But do we need to have our water meter guy drive around in the truck? He can do his routine on a bicycle. And simple things like that can be thought of and looked at from the holistic view, and say, let's make sense of how we employ our safety forces. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with regard to future growth, I think there's a lot of things that we can do to kind of, help, I don't know what the right word is, maybe massage the model to make sure that we kind of maintain our little village the way it is, but also allowing for, businesses to be able to, set up shop if they are willing to and follow code, right? With regard to Mayport, I think there's a huge opportunity over there in the Mayport corridor, in Marsh Oaks. Specifically, the mayor's already done some great things over there in terms of purchasing that community center to provide additional services to that neighborhood. In terms of when you say future growth, I think we need to not only think about where people are living, but what kind of services we're providing those people, okay? And that community center is going to be a great addition. Again, we've got some ways to go before we decide what's going to be put in that center and what kind of services are going to be offered. But that to me is extremely responsible growth for a neighborhood, right? With regards to Mayport Road, you're not sure if you guys are aware, but the Florida Department of Transportation is looking at that closely, and they have a project out, I think it's a year or two away. Commissioner Ring talked to me about it. She called it a road diet of sorts, where they're going to take Mayport Road from 3 lanes on either side. So right now, Mayport Road goes from, it goes 3 lanes on either side from Atlantic Boulevard down to the racetrack, which is, I think, Dutton Island Road, right? Just past that. They're going to take that to 2 lanes and lower the speed limit, okay? I think that's a great move to kind of protect our little village and give it that community feel that we want. I also think it'll probably discourage the military from using that corridor to go home to and fro. You got Wonderwood to accommodate that. I think it'll give businesses some room to do their thing too. You're getting rid of a lane, so I think we can make things much safer there. All those things need to be taken into account with regards to future growth. And then lastly, as we're growing and as people are investing money in the city, we need to make sure we're doing a fair by them with the enforcement code folks and making sure that they're getting all that they can from them and getting help to kind of put together what is appropriate and make sure that they follow code, but also enhance the area that they're investing in. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's continue this conversation about Mayport Road, because actually that was my follow-up question. So Mayport Road, as you know, we've been going back and forth trying to figure out the right development, how to connect the 2 sides. The major road redesign that they did many years ago, there's been so many complaints about how that really didn't work. It really hurt the businesses, especially on the west side of Mayport. What would you recommend coming in as a commissioner, working with FDOT, since that is their road? But just, what would you suggest, and what kind of the steps would you look at to take care of the blight? It would be you, Thomas. Start.
You got the microphone, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. I just want to say, Charles, you better maybe rolling over in his grave when he says you're going to restrict the Mayport Road so sailors can't use it. The whole Wonderwood Expressway was built expressly, not to say express twice, but so that sailors have a different way of getting out from the naval station if that road is clogged up. And there's a whole lot of traffic on Mayport Road trying to find the east-west road. So yeah, we can't deny the Navy, and that they are a big neighbor, and they have a lot of money. So I be careful on what we wish for on Mayport Road. But the land use, chapter 24, talks about new development on our roads. And if you look at some of the sites, some of the buildings that we have on Mayport Road, they have a parking lot in front of them. And maybe spots for 50 cars. No spots for trees, no grass. And then there's their storefront. Well, when you drive past that, you see an empty parking lot or you see a bunch of cars. And then you see the storefront. What we want to do is bring the storefront, it's not my idea, bring the stores closer to Mayport Road. Make it look more like a small village and have the parking in the rear. Because right now, all you see driving down Mayport Road is concrete. Yep. That's all you see. But by bringing the stores closer to the road, having a green space maybe in the road, maybe have some parking in the front so you make it easier, but have the parking lot, all the deliveries, all that stuff go into the backyard. Think of how that would change the look of Mayport Road considerably. Do we have the power to do that? Yeah. We can enforce that with new development, but you can't tell the guy that has his storage unit he has to move changes the way he's doing business. I don't think we have the authority to do that. And we've tried to drive businesses out of that Mayport corridor, and we certainly don't want to do that. So there are options, but they are in the future. Again, what is the plan? Where are we now? What's our state now? Where do we want to go in the future? And unfortunately, this transcends a couple of administrations. So we may agree on something today, but maybe 10 years from now, somebody's going to say, no, it's okay to build something that's 50 foot tall. Well, is that something we want? I don't know. And I don't want to make any predictions about that. But we have to have a concrete plan. That's a bad word. A definite plan of what we want to do to Mayport. And it has to involve the naval station. If it doesn't involve the naval station, we're going the wrong way.
Thank you. Thomas?
And just for clarification, I'm not saying we should prevent the Navy from using Mayport Road. I'm just saying when it goes from 3 to 2, they might not want to.
Right.
Because the traffic would bottleneck more so than it does today when they're trying to leave the base. And look, I know firsthand. My wife's a retired federal law enforcement officer for the Department of Defense, and used that artery every single day for 10 years before she moved on to a different base. So I certainly sympathize with the Navy, and it's an odd or a fragile, not fragile, but it's just you've got a nice neighborhood like us, and the Navy community want to pass right through it. So how do we balance that, right? I do, I like your idea about getting rid of the concrete view. I'm not sure how that would get paid for. It'd be nice if the buildings were there, but maybe putting some sort of shrubbery, more trees. There's hardly any trees on Mayport, so putting some type of trees and landscape to kind of hide some of that concrete that we're seeing today, versus having them move their building might be a better option. But with regard to Mayport, in terms of what I think we could do better than anything, is make it more accessible for the citizens that live in the Marsh Oak neighborhood to come to the other side of Mayport Road. Okay, right now, I think that it's gotten a lot better, but if you talk to those folks, they will tell you they felt disenfranchised for a very long time, and I think that's, I think we're turning the trend in that, and paying attention to their needs and wants. But I've been a big proponent of making sure that the kids of Atlantic Beach that live on that side of Mayport be zoned for Atlantic Beach Elementary. And that's all good and whatnot, but how do you get them over here? Well, there's buses, but I'd also like people to feel more comfortable crossing Mayport Road. Right now, they don't. They will tell you they don't. If they're walking or they're trying to bike to the beach, it's a bit of a crapshoot. The light to get across Mayport, those 6 lanes plus the median, hardly allows you enough time to cross. Okay, and if you don't believe me, go check it out yourself. But it's a problem. We need to make our side, the ocean, and all the parks that we have on our side, more accessible for those folks. And I'd like to see a robust crosswalk there. I think, maybe down the road, I'd love to see something that maybe traverses or some sort of bridge, possibly pedestrian bridge that fits the character of the neighborhood, to help those folks cross and make it safe for their children. So that's what I'd like to see, what's done down there. And I think look, we're pro-military for sure. My family, and if the Navy has something that they can offer to that redesign, I'd certainly love to hear it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Tom, we'll have one more question, and then we'll have closing statements. We might run over just a few minutes if that's okay with you guys, just to let you know. But I did want to get this one question out because I think it's going to be probably a hot topic coming down the road. There's been recent public awareness that Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach are seeking bids or discussing with JEA to operate or purchase our sewer and water utilities. What do you think could be gained by a deal with JEA, that would benefit the citizens of Atlantic Beach, if any? And Thomas, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you right up front, I'm against selling our utility to JEA. Okay? We currently have a stormwater mandate from the state to move our stormwater to, we can't dump it into the intercoastal anymore. Okay? So what's the solution for that? Well, there's a couple. There's a lot, right? There's, building a deep water well to inject this water below the aquifer, and that comes with a price tag close to $40 million. Where's that going to come from? Okay. Now we've got till 32 to before we have to meet that mandate, but still, those are things you have to start talking about right now. The other thing is, if I think Tallahassee's having reservations about how they wrote it, and I'm not sure that they intended to put this burden on small utilities such as Atlantic Beach, right? The threshold right now for exemption is $10 million. So if you have a utility and you're generating less than $10 million in revenue, you don't have to abide by this mandate. I say we're roughly at $16 million in total revenue. So, will they increase that? We'll see. I think that a better option is to take our stormwater, if we can't have it meet the mandate, and sell this, or pay JEA to take our stormwater. But we need to keep our utility. Why? Because we have some of the best water rates in town. Okay, because we're local, we're keeping it local. If we send it to JEA, we lose control of that. It's also a nice little profit center for this city, right? So if we lose our profit center, where's the money going to come from to replace that? Through increased taxes, through increased millage. So I'm absolutely against selling it to JEA. But it's going to be a hard discussion, because they do have some leverage. They they could say, hey, we're not taking your stormwater unless we get the whole kit and caboodle. But we got a fight ahead of us, and we need to figure out the best way to do it. And let's also see what Tallahassee says as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I can't prejudge what the JEA is going to do. I'm a little upset with JEA because of how their management is. There seems to be a little bit of corruption in the upper ranks. So I'm a little bit skeptical of what they're doing and how they're doing it. So unless we have a clear picture of what, and Tom alluded to this, a clear picture of what they're going to do and what's going to be the cost to us, I would reserve judgment on whether or not they're going to take over our water utility. One thing I'd like to mention also about JEA, I like solar power. I think it's great if we had more solar power in our neighborhood. But I have a lot of shade, as I mentioned before, and so I'm limited in that. But there are places in Atlantic Beach that we can use solar panels. Go at the other end of Mayport Road, and you will see the Naval Air Station has a lot of area for solar panels. You know what? You can put a pond underneath that solar panels. We'll take care of the stormwater. We can pump our stormwater there, and we can generate electricity from there. But JEA will not allow me, or at least I haven't looked in the past couple of years, to take my solar power and use it for my house, and if I don't use it all, sell it back to JEA. Why are they fighting me? Well, they want me to pay for their electricity. But I think we need to pursue, again, a holistic approach of where we are, where we need to go, and do a real solid cost-benefit analysis. I think I've said that 4 times already, of what we need to do before we start making decisions. And it's a good question, but we don't know the answers to it because we haven't seen any proposals. I mean, everybody wants water. Our water comes from an aquifer high up from where we are, and it naturally flows down because of gravity. We have excellent water pressure, and the experts say that we're going to have that water for a long time. Why do we need to change that? I think as long as our infrastructure can support delivery to the houses, I think we're in good shape with our water the way it is. Now, electricity is a different issue. We need to have more solar power and maybe even wind power. I don't know about that, but it may change how we look at the ocean. I think study is important. Engineering is for engineers, science is for scientists.
Okay, thank you. And now we will conclude with closing statements, and Mark, we'll start with you, and you have 3 minutes.
That's all? As I said, I went to the Naval Academy, graduated class of 73. I've had 24 years in the service. I have had the privilege of working for you, and thank you for paying my salary and my retirement. I've had the privilege of living overseas in Holland. I was exchange officer in the Dutch Navy. That was a great experience. I learned how to navigate. I learned so much about society. I learned how the Dutch treat people. And one of the things I really liked about the Dutch people was they had an expression, and it's better to have a good neighbor than a far friend. A good neighbor versus a far friend. And that's what we would like to have in Atlantic Beach, good neighbors. Far friend, somebody, maybe in Neptune Beach, that's not too far. But somebody in Tallahassee, you need to know who your neighbor is. So if you go for help, you need that. So it's really important. And leadership is really important on the commission. We don't know all the answers. We need to hear your voice. How do you get that voice? You get people to go to the meetings, you inspire them, you get them to volunteer. So my campaign, if you looked at my website, your voice, your vote, you volunteer. Because once again, you volunteer, you own it. And people ask me about leadership. I say, if you make a difference in one person's life, one person, you have made a difference for the community. Because if everybody does that, everyone has had a difference. And I'm kind of, I don't like to brag. I prefer humility over hubris anytime. But I made a difference in one guy's life. Go back to the Dutch Navy, navigation. I knew how to navigate the ship. I was on a ship, I was number 2 in command, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Nobody around, miles and miles away from any base, any airplanes, anything. 8 o'clock in the morning, took muster, as you do at sea. Count noses. We're missing 1 nose. It's a guy brown somewhere. Count again. Still missing. Count again. 3rd time, he's still missing. When was the last time anybody saw him? 4 o'clock in the morning. Now it's about 9:30. And this is emotional for me. Man, I went to the Navy, 30 seconds already? I can't. Real short, I went to sea. Every time I said, I hope I don't kill anybody, I hope I don't hurt anybody. It's my responsibility. This man was in the water already for 6 hours, and he fell off my ship. I had the skill, I had the leadership, I had the management to go find that guy. Directed the ship right to him, because with leadership and the skill I had. I had other teams figure out where they could be, figure out the wind, the currents, my speed. We found that guy. You know what he said when he came aboard? What's for lunch?
Thank you.
I said, what? I said, you know how lucky you are? I said, no, I knew you would find me.
Thank you.
I didn't want him to bing, I wanted to hear the end of that story. I didn't want him to ding the bell. But, no, Mark, thanks for your service. You know, truly, I'm very appreciative of our military. You know, I didn't serve, but I'm very proud of my family. And as I mentioned before, my wife is a federal law enforcement officer with the DOD, NCIS. Many people know who they are. And then my son, my 18-year-old son who just graduated Fletcher, is a couple weeks away from reporting to Paris Island for boot camp, for Marine boot camp. So really proud of him. So we're gonna do our part, hopefully. And then my daughter Mary, who is probably gonna be a lawyer in DC one day and run for office. And God help anybody that gets in her way. But in any case, no, as I said, I'm a longtime resident. I I love this neighborhood. I love, you know, what it's done for me and my kids. It's absolutely, I think, one of the most perfect places to raise a family that you will ever find on the Eastern Seaboard. Now, and I really mean that, because what I look at when I say that is, if you look at, you know, Eastern Seaboard beach towns, most of them are all tourism. There's no real commerce around them. They're not next to a Jacksonville. You know, there's a couple up north, but I think between, you know, above Charleston all the way to Miami, we're one of the few. So I just love it here, and it's the first time I laid eyes on it, I knew this was going to be home for the rest of my life. Again, in terms of qualifications, I talked about my years at Crowley. I've been in transportation logistics for 32 years. You know, our city budget is just under $60 million. You know, I managed projects for Walmart that were in excess of $120 million, okay? And moving, you know, their product and making sure all of you folks had bananas and toilet paper and everything else when you went into to Walmart. I also did the same with Home Depot. Similar numbers, you know, making sure you guys had your lumber and your air filters and whatnot. So I think, you know, I don't know if you guys have seen it. I'll end with this. You know, and I look forward to seeing the replay and find all the mistakes I made on YouTube. But if you haven't done it, go to the Neptune Beach Beaches Watch that just occurred, I guess, a couple weeks ago, right? That was very contentious. There was some ugliness there. I was like really caught off guard and surprised, and that's the thing I don't really, you know, I think Atlantic Beach and what's been done here on the current commission the last 2 years is keep it sane, keep it civil, and that's going to be, you know, part of my effort too, just to kind of keep things, you know, there's an old saying, when you go to the beach, leave only your footprints. That's kind of the way I look at, you know, serving as well. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. After the election.
Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you so much for participating. I know it was quite a challenge there with Helene and Milton, but we got it done. So this will be on our website and our YouTube channel tomorrow. I will forward out the link to you guys so you can add it to your website or send it out to your constituents and make sure everyone, and please make sure your neighbors and friends who were not able to join us live tunes in on the YouTube or our website. So thank you guys. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and the weekend, and vote.
Read the answers to the written questions for us.
Oh yes, yes. We will be posting the written
right.
answers
right.
on our website. So look for that. They'll be posted as well by tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.